Okay, this week we're studying session 28. And before we begin the study, we will acknowledge and give our gratitude Thank you to those of Ra. Thank you for being our guides along the way. Thank you for being so dedicated to the ways of unity, that you stay with us and offer us these teachings. Thank you to our friends at LNL Research, who also demonstrate so much dedication. Thank you to whatever it is within us that keeps us pointed towards the ways of unity. Thank you to the Creator. All right. Thanks, y'all. So session 28. Anybody want to jump in and start the reading? Aaron, thanks.
Okay. 28:0. I am Ra. I greet you in the love and the light of the one infinite creator. I communicate now. Questioner, I may be backtracking a little bit and make a few false starts today because I think we are at possibly the most important part of what we are doing in trying to make it apparent through questioning how everything is one and how it comes from one intelligent infinity. This is difficult for me to do, so please bear with my errors in questioning. The concept that I have right now of the process, using both what you have told me and some of Dewey Larson's material, having to do with the physics of the process, I have the concept that intelligent infinity expands outward from all locations everywhere. It expands outward in every direction uniformly, like the surface of a balloon or a bubble, expanding outward from every point everywhere. It expands outward at what's called unit velocity, or the velocity of light. This is Larson's idea of the progression of what he calls space-time. Is this concept correct? I am Ra. This concept is incorrect, as is any concept of the one intelligent infinity. This concept is correct in the context of one particular logos, or love, or focus of this creator, which has chosen its, shall we say, natural laws and ways of expressing them, mathematically and otherwise. The one undifferentiated intelligent infinity, unpolarized, full and whole, is the macrocosm of the mystery-clad being. We are messengers of the law of one. Unity, at this approximation of understanding, cannot be specified by any physics, but only be activated or potentiated, intelligent infinity, due to the catalyst of free will. This may be difficult to accept. However, the understandings we have to share begin and end in mystery.
I think that's a chunk. So let's pause there. So Ross says this concept is incorrect, but then Ross says this concept is correct. So what are they saying is incorrect and what are they saying is correct?
I mean, I think that they're saying that at the level of any concept, it can't contain that which produces concepts. Like all concepts come from intelligent infinity. They're all part of the one infinite idea. God's infinite idea is made up of all the concepts. So concepts can't contain that. They can't contain their own source. basically. But then they go on to say, and it's correct in this particular context of one logos. So the logos in a way is a concept, like our logos, our galactic logos, of which we're all participating in and a part of, like has chosen some portion of infinity to investigate and to create and to experience.
Yeah.
And so within that, whatever concept or portion of the infinite idea our logos has chosen, there is something about what Don was saying about expanding outward in every direction uniformly that has some resonance. It has some truth to it.
Yeah.
So is Ross saying like you might be right for this universe, but not for every universe?
That's what I'm getting out of it too, Shang.
What is this line? Unity at this approximation of understanding cannot be specified by any physics. Okay, I get that. Just saying like you can't distill it down to like a set of rules. But only be activated or potentiated intelligent infinity due to the catalyst of free will.
Yeah.
What does that second part mean?
I mean, I guess what I get from that is, which might not be accurate, but it's like unity is like potential, because it's all of it before it has been, apparently fragmented or made a choice to focus. So then it's activated due to free will. So the free will is the focusing of the one thing. Does that make any sense?
So they're saying like you can't make any rules to describe infinity. Infinity is just an infinite potential that can form anything, basically.
Yeah.
I think last session they talked about, or I think it was last session, they talked about when they use the term intelligent infinity, there's two meanings of it. There's the meaning of intelligent infinity that's the macrocosm, the undivided, like intelligent infinity before it moves towards awareness, before it moves towards creation, before it moves towards kinetic. And then there's intelligent infinity that's like in the process of creating the universe. So when they say unity at this approximation of understanding cannot be specified by any physics, they're basically saying like it's the like you can't talk about infinity. You can't there is no possibility of defining infinity. Like you can't turn any concept into it. You can't it's just like the mystery-clad being will forever remain in mystery. You can't describe it. You can't define it. But intelligent infinity can be activated or potentiated once the creator has the concept of free will or becomes aware. Then you can start to talk about it. Then you can start to like discuss it or something. Anyway, I don't know if that made sense.
Yeah, makes sense. Because if it has focus, then it has objective qualities, and those objective qualities can be described.
Well, and once you have focus, like there are things that get excluded by focusing. When the creator chooses to focus on something, there are things that get excluded. And so then you can have a conversation about it, because there's like you can begin to define things and describe things and try to talk about it
Compare.
and
things.
compare exactly and compare
Yeah.
this, not that.
Yeah.
But all attempts to define or describe before then, like, you know, in the intelligent infinity that's undifferentiated are not possible. And they say, this may be difficult to accept. However, the understandings we have to share begin and end in mystery.
Yeah. Well, should we keep going? Keep chipping away?
Chip away.
Do you want to read more?
Oh, someone else can go.
Anybody want to read 28.2 or pick up there?
I can read.
Great.
Questioner. Well, we had yesterday arrived at a point where we were considering colors of light. You said that the nature of the vibratory patterns of your universe is dependent upon the configurations placed on the original material or light by the focus of love using its intelligent energy to create a certain pattern of illusions or densities. Then after this material, you said that there's further information which you'd be happy to share, but we ran out of time. Could you complete the further information on that? I'm Ra. In discussing this information, we then, shall we say, snap back into the particular methods of understanding or seeing that which is that the one sound vibration complex Dewey offers, this being correct for the second meaning of intelligent infinity, the potential which then through catalyst forms the kinetic. This information is a natural progression of inspection of the kinetic shape of your environment. You may understand each color or ray as being, as we had said, a very specific and accurate portion of intelligent energy's representation of intelligent infinity, each ray having been previously inspected in other regards. This information may be of aid here. We speak now non-specifically to increase the depth of your conceptualization of the nature of what is. The universe in which you live is recapitulation in each part of intelligent infinity. Thus, you will see the same patterns repeated in physical and metaphysical areas. The rays or portions of light being, as you surmise, those areas of what you may call the physical illusion, which rotate, vibrate, or are of a nature that may be, shall we say, counted or categorized in rotation manner in space-time as described by the one known as Dewey. Some substances having various of the rays in a physical manifestation visible to the eye, this being apparent in the nature of your crystallized minerals, which you count as precious, the ruby being red and so forth. Questioner, this light that occurred as a consequence of vibration, which is a consequence of love, I am going to ask if that statement is right. Is that correct? I'm Rod. This statement is correct.
Yeah, let's do one more.
Okay, this light then can condense into material as we know it in our density, into all of our chemical elements because of rotations of the vibration at quantized intervals or units of angular velocity. Is this correct? I'm Ra. This is quite correct.
Yeah, let's pause there.
Can I share something?
Yeah, please.
I just got a sort of image of a metaphor of the two meanings of intelligent infinity that Ra talks about. It's like the image I get is that the intelligent infinity that is undifferentiated and whole and beyond any conceptualization is sort of like, the image I get is God with the eye closed or eyes closed or something, and content within itself, like just infinite contentment. And then, Ra describes the first step in the universe is infinity becomes aware. And like that's the first step is like God opening its eye. It's like being interested in seeing something, like being interested in being able to focus on something amidst all of its infinite capacity, wanting to see one thing, wanting to see one idea, wanting to focus on one thing at a time or something like that. So anyway, I don't know if it's useful, but it's like God's eye being closed, and in meditation is like intelligent infinity in the potential form, and God opening its eye is like the production of the kinetic process that creates the universe or something. I mean, it's just an image I got. I don't know if it's helpful.
Nia gives you a thumbs up. It looks like Neil's impacted too. Did you want to say something, Neil?
I mean, yeah, it's pretty easy to understand in terms of what happened in session 27 of just trying to conceptualize that. And that definitely hits with our monkey mind of how to imagine that. And yeah, so thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I think the reason why that's there for me, that metaphor is there for me, is because my current focus for meditation comes from Bentinho, one of my teachers, Bentinho Massaro. He taught a course on meditation, and there's plenty of people who teach the same thing, but like basically like that meditation can be just the process of letting go of everything that mind is interested in. Just for a moment, just letting it all go. All the activity of the mind, all the things the mind tends to want to focus on and look at. Just for a moment, just let it all go and let it all relax back into like stillness. So that's been my practice in my meditation lately. And so because that's my practice, I kind of imagine like, what happens when God does that? Like when God does that, it's like when God goes into stillness, everything resolves back into no universe, nothing is happening anymore. And then when God is opening its eye, it's like it's interested in something again. And they're both relevant. They're both a part of the impulse of like, the yin and the yang, or whatever, the duality that we experience in our lives. Connect to that somehow. Those two states of stillness versus like movement.
I was just wondering if anybody had heard of Dewey Larson before the raw material, or had gotten any sort of physics before this, because I'd never heard of him.
No, I didn't. I learned about Dewey Larson through reading this, and I was traveling back. I listened to a lecture that he gave. He was born in 1898, and then he lived for 92 years. He died in 1990, so he lived a good long life. And there are some recordings of his lecture, or some video recordings of his lectures he gave in 1974 or something, about his science, about his teaching. So I was listening to some of those, and he reminds me of Don. He seems very kind of heady and scientifically oriented, very rational. But he had some pretty deep insights into the nature of reality in his theories.
Does he have books?
Yeah, there's 3 volumes are his major contribution to science, were 3 volumes called I think it's called The Nature of Reality, volumes 1, 2, and 3.
Would this be worthy of a book study? Potentially. Just a thought.
I'm not
No
sure.
pressure.
Maybe. I mean, I haven't read them, so I wouldn't know. But I think it's pretty scientific. Like he comes from a pretty he's kind of a hard scientist. Like he's really interested in, whatever. Like
It's a bit of the equations and like reading a physics book.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we were doing The Secret of Light, which is like poetic science, for lack of a better term. And it was like, we reference it on a regular basis. And here we have Ross specifically stating, yes, this is correct in a sense. And so my brain's tickling with like, well, I mean, maybe I should self-study this, because I do geek out to equations and science in that regard. So maybe it's just something I need to dive into, but it was a thought, because if we're if Ra's referencing this on a regular, and then we end up referencing Secretive Light, it was just weaving that in and tying. It's one of my favorite things, is finding these what look like completely separate threads, and then something else comes along and it's like physically putting that thread into the loom to add it to these other pieces that all end up with this beautiful tapestry. And one could be on the far side and a certain color, and one could be on the other side a certain color, and yet they're still part of the same tapestry. So I mean, on one hand, you could zoom out and be like, it's all part of the one infinite creative, but I like examining each thread as a different mechanic and geeking out that way. So I'll probably zoom in on the Dewey Larson aspect soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, I
Yeah,
just
I
want
love
to
that.
offer the potential that, you can go out and do your own independent study. And if you want to, come back and give us a presentation, like Neil is demonstrating this week. With his
Right.
Yahweh presentation. Come
Which
back
I'm
and tell us what you learned.
super appreciative of Neil doing this. And then, yeah,
Me too.
That's a good idea, BJ. I'll feel it. I'll feel into that. See what happens.
Cool.
Thanks.
The recordings of those lectures I mentioned earlier I found them on a YouTube channel of a guy who his channel is about teaching Walter Russell. Like his channel is about describing Russellian science, and he has on his channel Dewey Larson's lectures.
Okay.
And I was reading this session today, and then doing a little bit of like, wait, what is Dewey Larson's main points? And I was reading the Larsonian. There's like a web page on his theories, and I have a very strong intuition that like they're completely congruent, and like the theory that Dewey Larson came up with is now called reciprocal theory, or RS. And reciprocal are the mother and father lights that Walter Russell talks about, and the upward and downward spiral that Ra talks about. Like there's these core, key movements that I think these different systems are completely aligned with each other and talking about the same thing.
Gotcha. I would love to look into that. And if you feel like resource sharing that in any way to help narrow it down, because just at first glance, there's a lot. I'm like, oh, there's even one reciprocal system, RS2, like is the name of the, so yeah. Thanks.
Yep, will do.
I was wondering if there's, like the idea of the Confederation helping people, and, how did Larson conceptualize this, and, how maybe Ra helped Larson, and then Don had some sort of connection to Larson, and it's all played into itself in this larger picture. And so there might be some Confederation influence. I don't know if they directly ask if Larson was influenced.
I think they did at one point, but I don't remember when.
I don't remember them ever asking if Larson was influenced by the Confederation, but my intuition is that like he was probably a wanderer. And just to be, my sense is that the reason why Ra is mentioning Dewey and Dewey Larson is because I think Dewey Larson is I think Don is exploring Larson's science. And so that's like Don's trying to make sense in a scientific way of the concepts that Ra is teaching and the Confederation teaches. And because it seems like that's his main kind of touchstone from a scientific point of view. And so that's why Ra is choosing Larson to talk about. It's because that's the context that Don's going to understand. Like Ra could have chosen like Vedic sciences, or there's others, like the Ra could have chosen any of the things that are vibrating with the truth of the law of one. But because Don knows Larson, Dewey Larson's work and science, that's why I feel like that's why they're choosing to talk about it in this, in these conversations.
And I think that's a really important concept to keep in mind as we go through the material, which I feel like even I forget, and I try to remind myself that Ra was speaking to these three. Ra was not speaking to all of us reading the books or going through the material later. So that exactly what you just said, I consistently have, well, why did Ra choose this? Oh yeah, because that's who he's talking to. So that's a piece I forget and then remember and then forget and then remember to keep in mind. So thanks for speaking to them.
Yeah, totally. And I think it even comes through in the ending that they give every session when they say Adonai. I think they choose that sound vibration complex because it resonates with this group. Like if they were talking to some other group that wasn't an English speaking group, they might use some, Hindu term or, who knows, like, but they say Adonai because it resonates with the kind of like religious spiritual system that's going to be the most meaningful and impactful for these characters, for Don and Carla and Jim.
Okay, I want to focus this on one particular piece, and then potentially move on, or open to more conversation too. But in 28.2, Don refers back to, I guess, what came from session 27, where he says, the nature of the vibratory patterns of the universe is dependent upon the configurations placed on the original material or light. So there's configurations placed on the original material, light, configurations placed upon light by the focus of love, using its intelligent energy to create a certain pattern of illusions or densities. So there's light, there's configurations placed on light by the focus of love, and that creates illusion or densities. So then Don restates that in 28.3 in his own words. This light that occurred as a consequence of vibration, which is a consequence of love. And Ross says this is correct. So what do y'all make of that? Would somebody be willing to kind of restate that in your own understanding? Yeah, Aaron.
What it makes me think of is the primordial ohm, the sound ohm, and the idea that the primordial ohm is the first vibration in the universe. That's from the Vedic teachings. So like in this context, love would be love is synonymous with the logos, and the logos could be synonymous with a song, like ohm is could be synonymous with the logos, like just the choice of choosing a vibrational pattern, choosing some direction for focus, for experience, and then emanating that through vibration, which creates, which is this, which is light being kind of a synonym for vibration. And then in the context of cymatics, which is the relationship between sound and pattern or form, like the primordial ohm creates the densities. It creates the specific qualities of, or the sort of boundary conditions of the creation in that logos's creation. So in this context, let's just talk about our galaxy, or the 250 billion stars that make up our galaxy. That's our logos. We'll get into that here in a minute. That's what comes up for me is the logos or love kind of like sings a song or like chooses something to worship or to experience or to focus on through its love. And then that creates some sort of vibrational pattern. The pattern then creates the sort of boundary conditions for the densities of that creation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or as Ross says, that creates the kinetic shape of your environment.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. Anybody else want to chime in on that, or shall we go on to 28.5? Thanks, Aaron, for giving us your thought.
You're welcome.
Mm-hmm.
I went back to session 27 to remind myself what Ra was saying last time. So Don was asking, why are there 7 densities? Why are there 7 colors? And that was this is a continuation of that question, saying,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, well, that's just how the creator knows itself.
Yeah. Right.
And this, I'm not sure I understand answer any better than before, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, I know for sure I don't understand. I really wish that the answer that came through in response to like Don asking Ra about color was more clear, because like I'm so interested in why colors, like why is red associated with first density? Like what does red have to do with the metaphysical, the lessons of consciousness? And why does orange have to do with, like I'd love to know more about colors and how they relate to the lessons that lessons of consciousness. And the way that they are able to get into that in their conversation doesn't really yield a whole lot of understanding for me. Yeah, I wish it was a little more clear, because I'm so interested in color and the rainbow and what that has to do with like meaning. And I don't know.
I'm trying to read this, and Ra seems like he's just saying like, well, every color is a portion of infinity. Well, yeah, I get that, but why? I still don't get why they're seven. You just, and I remember last time we were like, is seven just this universe or is it every universe? And we weren't sure about that. I mean, yes, these are more details. Ra's giving me a more detailed answer, but I'm not sure that it answers what okay. I'm still as confused as before.
Mm-hmm.
I have a thought.
Yeah.
So we have like a spectrum of light that is, if when we're looking at non-visible forms of light, between ultraviolet and gamma, and there's X-ray, there's all of these way beyond our visual scope, and the visual light that we see is such a sliver of what's actually going on. I love the NASA photos where they have been filtered to show non-colors by color. So we get to see clouds of exploding neutron stars and the things that are being ejected and or chemically going on around it. We wouldn't be able to see these things happening, but they can detect it, and they've put a color filter on it so that our brains can be like, oh, there's this thing that we wouldn't have been able to see otherwise. So it would just be invisible on top of invisible on top of invisible, yet they are still happening. They are in a potentiated form of reality. So for me, I picture, which, our language is really key on how we're experiencing things. I see that this way. I think of it this way. I picture it this way, that the 7 colors of the rainbow that we have, and then there's like infinite within those mixing and things, they're obviously specific to the receptors in our eyeballs for us to conceptualize. Wouldn't that be relevant also to our human experience and our third density experience? Just like it's been said in various ways that we are humanoid in form and structure, and other non-local entities also have a singular head, 2 arms, 2 legs. We are very similar in our humanoid aspect. And I think it was Rudolf Steiner that was, and a bunch of others actually, that were discussing the soul is the potentiator that has chosen to take that form because it expresses energetically our soul's form. So that's how we end up with chemical biological bodies in this form. So to me, the color spectrum of our visual limited 7-ray makes sense to me in the idea that like 5th, 6th density beings are in energy form. They are beyond our visible spectrum. So what we're working through and what Ra's trying to help us being messengers of the law of one is only relevant with our color ray. We're not working with X-ray material here. We're not working with gamma and or ultraviolet and or, you know, we have bees working with ultraviolet to spot the flowers. There's an electric receptor for them, and their reality is very dependent upon them being able to read the flowers and their ultraviolet capacity, which they've now recently discovered has to do with a teeny tiny form of electricity. So zooming back out and circling around with all of that, it feels to me like the color rays are specific to our human development, and Ra's only concerned with where we are and our understanding, and we're constantly, Dawn and the rest of us are constantly trying to reach beyond what's relevant for our experience to just grasp a larger understanding, and Ra is constantly trying to distill it back down to say, you're not going to understand. It begins and ends in mystery. Here's your color rays. You get to work with these. This is what we're going to talk about. The rest doesn't matter. This is not the density of understanding for you.
Yeah.
So on a scientific level, that makes sense to me.
I had a kind of a thought on the Larson material and just like shining a light through a prism, and it's just the way it works that when you shine the white light, the first one is red, and that just, you know, starts rotating at an angle like this, and then as you go down, the orange starts rotating like this, and that's just the way they rotate as they're shine through into experience. So it's, I don't know, on that atomic level, that's just the way it works, and the creator somehow saw that tilt was just what happens to get to know itself, and as it learned more into the orange ray, it was like, okay, I just need to tilt it this much. And I'm sure that all happened in an octave way before ours, and the colors kind of built on themselves until we have 7 here. So it may have just been red for an entire like billions of years, and then the next octave was orange, and then now our octave has 7, and that's just what's passed down. So yeah, I'm sure on the microscopic level, if we could see them rotating, that's might be what it is, but I don't know.
Right. And to tack on to that, as Ra mentions, the ruby is red. We're like, wait, let's break that down. Ra's like, it's simple. The ruby is molecularly, they don't say that, but it's atomically and molecularly structured in bonded forms, and that we see rubies as red. Yeah, I like that, Neil.
I wonder if that has to do, like, if you were giving someone the ruby, like it was a very kind of sexual energy, or that red ray of like, you know, I want to bring out the red ray in you, and here's some red for me, and that's why the ruby was popular, and maybe.
Yeah. Or earthly security or some other red
Right.
ray.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I think everything fundamental to red, whether it's on the density level or on the human level, you know, rubies are going to have that kind of embedded in them. Like in 28.2, Ra says, thus you will see the same patterns repeated in physical and metaphysical areas. And I think in that little phrase, they're talking about the holographic and fractal nature of reality, like red, like in the color spectrum, red in the physical color that we see as red is a resonance with the metaphysical qualities of red, which is like the density red. What does consciousness learn in first density? And the red ray, you know, the root chakra. What do we learn as individuals when we're contemplating the lessons of survival and sexuality? You know, it's all all that information is somehow resonating in the ruby, in the red crystal ruby. Like it's all holographic somehow too, I think. And that seems like that's what they're pointing to. You'll see the same patterns repeated in physical and metaphysical areas. It's all holographic in that sense. It's all fractal in that sense. And one more thing I wanted to say was like, there's a psychology of color. There's like an area of study that people have like, tried to map, like how does blue make people feel? Universally, how does it make people feel across cultures and across time? How does blue make people feel? And there seems to be some scientific, measurability to that. And then there's also the psychology of sound and the notes, and there's the whole like it was so fascinating. I attended a session at the retreat in Seattle, the Coming Home to New Earth retreat. And this, Law of One student who's a musician gave a talk about his correlation between the law of one and sound. And he was in front of a piano and he played sounds for us. And then he was just kind of riffing on like different metaphysical and philosophical questions. But it was just so powerful to like realize like, wow, we're so moved by sound. Like if someone plays a particular chord, we all feel it. Like some chords just have some universal sense of sorrow, or some chords have some universal sense of like upliftment or something, and it's the same with color. And somehow there is something to that, whether it's sound or color or densities or rays. There's some universal qualities that are being expressed that have to do with what we're talking about here. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, I think it would be good to continue the reading.
Okay. I saw Nia had her hand up. I don't know if she retracted it.
Yeah, it went right back down. I
Okay.
assumed it wasn't intentional. 28.5. I can start us off. 28.5 questioner. Thank you. I'm wondering, what is the catalyst or the activator of the rotation? What causes the rotation so that the light condenses into our physical or chemical elements? I am Ra. It is necessary to consider the enabling function of the focus known as love. This energy is of an ordering nature. It orders in a cumulative way from greater to lesser, so that when its universe, as you may call it, is complete, the manner of development of each detail is inherent in the living light, and thus will develop in such and such a way. Your own universe having been well studied in an empirical fashion by those you call your scientists, and having been understood or visualized, shall we say, with greater accuracy by the understandings or visualizations of the one known as Dewey. Questioner, when does individualization or the individualized portion of consciousness come into play? How does this individualization occur? And at what point does individualized consciousness take over in working on the basic light? I am Ra. You remain carefully in the area of creation itself. In this process, we must further confuse you by stating that the process by which free will acts upon potential intelligent infinity to become focused intelligent energy takes place without the space-time of which you are so aware, as it is your continuum experience. The experience or existence of space-time comes into being after the individuation process of logos, or love, has been completed, and the physical universe, as you would call it, has coalesced or begun to draw inward, while moving outward to the extent that that which you call your sun bodies have, in their turn, created timeless chaos, coalescing into what you call planets. These vortices of intelligent energy spending a large amount of what you would call first density in a timeless state, the space-time realization being one of the learned teachings of this density of beings. Thus, we have difficulty answering your questions with regard to time and space and their relationship to the, what you would call, original creation, which is not a part of space-time, as you can understand it. Questioner, thank you. Does a unit of consciousness, an individualized unit of consciousness, create, say, a unit of the creation? I will give an example. Would one individualized consciousness create one galaxy of stars, the type that has many millions of stars in it? Does this happen? I am Ra. This can happen. The possibilities are infinite. Thus, a logos may create what you call a star system, or it may be the logos creating billions of star systems. This is the cause of the confusion in the term galaxy, for there are many different logos entities or creations, and we would call each, using your sound vibration complexes, a galaxy. Questioner, let's take as an example the planet that we are on now, and tell me how much of the creation was created by the same logos that created this planet. I am Ra. This planetary logos is a strong logos creating approximately 250 billion of your star systems for its creation. The, shall we say, laws or physical ways of this creation will remain, therefore, constant. Questioner, then what you're saying is that the lenticular star system, which we call a galaxy, that we find ourselves in, with approximately 250 billion other suns like our own, was created by a single logos. Is this correct? I am Ra. This is correct. We stop there.
I just did a quick Google to see if the 250 billion was accurate, and one website said 300 and another NASA said 200. So I'm assuming it's pretty correct there.
Mhm.
Give or take 50 billion. Yeah. Well, there's more that continues on the same topic. What do y'all think? Keep reading on the same topic. I think I'll read through 2813.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so 2810. Now, since there are many individualized portions of consciousness in this lenticular galaxy, did this logos then subdivide into more individualization of consciousness to create these consciousnesses, or divide into these consciousnesses? I am wrong. You are perceptive. This is also correct, although an apparent paradox. Questioner, could you tell me what you mean by an apparent paradox? I am Ra. It would seem that if one logos creates the intelligent energy waves for a large system, there would not be the necessity or possibility of the further sub-logos differentiation. However, within limits, this is precisely the case, and it is perceptive that this has been seen. Questioner, thank you. Could you please make the instrument cough? Cough. Questioner, thank you. Do all of the individualized portions of the logos then in our, I'll call the lenticular galaxy that we are in, 250 billion stars or suns or stars, I will call that the major galaxy, just so we'll not get mixed up in our terms. Does all the consciousness then in this individualized form that goes into what we're calling the major galaxy start out and go through all of the densities in order? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or then to 8th? Or is there, shall I say, some who start higher up the rank and go in a, so that there is always a mixture of intelligent consciousness in the galaxy? I am Ra. The latter is more nearly correct. In each beginning, there is the beginning from infinite strength. Free will acts as a catalyst. Beings begin to form the universes. Consciousness then begins to have the potential to experience. The potentials of experience are created as a part of intelligent energy and are fixed before experience begins. However, there is always, due to free will acting infinitely upon the creation, a great variation in initial responses to intelligent energy's potential. Thus, almost immediately, the foundations of the, shall we call it, hierarchical nature of beings begins to manifest as some portions of consciousness or awareness learn through experience in a much more efficient manner.
I think one more.
One more?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're right. Questioner, is there any reason for some portions being much more efficient in learning? I am Ra. Is there any reason for some to learn more quickly than others? Look, if you wish, to the function of the will, the, shall we say, attraction to the upward spiraling line of light. All right, people, what are you experiencing over there?
I mean, we're on the deepest end of the pool. This is like, I mean, this is just as deep as metaphysics could get. It's like, how do you describe the primal movements of the creator when it creates galaxies and even before the galaxy? Like what happens before the galaxy is even formed, just in the space of the creator's mind? I mean, it's so profound, you guys.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like, for me, the simple meditation, but that's not so simple to experience, of awareness turning back towards awareness. Like usually we're aware of something, we're aware of something, but then becoming aware of awareness. But then it's like become aware of the awareness that was prior to your awareness that helped create your awareness. It's like even before. Yeah.
So the logos, the concept of the logos is logos is still part of the creator, right? Logos never leaves the creator. Logos is the reason I'm asking is like this stuff about going through the densities, going through the colors. Does that apply to the logos? If the logos never leaves the creator, like what is this? What is Rock even talking about? Is Rock talking about like we go through the as far as I understand, the sub at the level of sub-logoi, whatever, like people and aliens and Ra and all these things that like incarnate into bodies, we cycle. And apparently there's one section where like, oh, there's some planets that like aren't part of the standard cycle, whatever. What is this? What is Ra even talking about here? Like these statements, are they? Does the logos go through the colors? Let's start with that.
Well, my just initial response to your question, Sean, is like just pointing back to what Ra says in 28:10, where they say, in response to Don, they say, you are perceptive. This is also correct, although an apparent paradox. I mean, I think your question is like just pointing so centrally and directly to the paradox of the logos, of like what a logos is. Because the logos is the being that creates the boundary condition, it creates the physics of what will then manifest as its creation, whether it's a galaxy or a sun or whatever. But then it also seems to be capable of like individuating into more specific portions of itself. It's like a galactic logos can also spawn solar versions of itself that are more specifically interested in something. And then the sun, the solar logoi are able to spawn us. And we certainly seem to be participating in the evolutionary process. So it's like a both and. It's like logoi are the ones who create the boundary conditions of what its creation will then experience and evolve within. But then it also somehow generates the beings that do the evolving. But somehow they don't ever participate in the evolving. Like logo, when you think of galactic logoi, it's like you said, Sean, like I think Ra has said somewhere that like they don't really evolve. They don't really, like they always remain, I don't know how to say it, but connected to the infinite creator. Like the logoi are direct expressions or emanations of the one infinite creator. They're not really participating in their creation. They're the ones who create the conditions of their creation. But then paradoxically, they also create subunits of themselves that do participate in the creation that they've just created. Anyway, paradox. It's
Well, I guess I also wonder, like, if the way that they don't participate, like they never leave the oneness, is kind of similar to what would approximate as our consciousness, but before the veil. I get that it's probably not the same, right? But was that kind of the same? That, like, if third density entities on this planet before there was a veil could see that that separation wasn't real, that there was the one thing, did they in a way never leave through their own free will? Like we have to choose into the experience of separation. Like that's what I get through my practice of self-inquiry. Like we can experience separation if in some way we're interested in it, and usually we're not actually interested in it, but we innocently find ourselves interested in it because we think that it's real. And when we think that it's real, then, like, well, of course I have to believe it because that's what's happening. But that is our choosing it, and only through choosing it do we experience it. But we're going to experience it. It creates the boundary conditions of our life, of our take on the world. When we believe in separation, oh, I'm going to feel like I'm separate, and oh yeah, it really matters if you like me or not, and oh yeah, it really matters if I eat today or not, like whatever. Like, separation becomes really impactful. And so then in a sense we become separate from the one thing, and we split off, but we never actually do, but we do through our own consciousness and our own, like, telling and our own experience, which is everything, right? Like Ross says, like, the creator doesn't so much create as experience. Like, that's all there is to creation, is experience. So when I experience separation is real, even if it's an illusion. Anyway, I guess I just wonder if not splitting from the one thing is really just not having a veil in a way. I don't know.
I think that's really insightful, BJ. I think Ross says that once the invention of the veil was discovered by the logos, it's synonymous with the logos, the galactic or solar logos, then extending free will to its creation. Like, before there was a veil, there wasn't really the choice to choose the negative path. There wasn't really the choice to be a free will agent. Like, all the people, all the third density entities were kind of joined with or merged with their logos. They didn't really experience free will in the same way that we do here in the veiled condition.
Yeah.
I have a thought on the manifestation of a logos into sentient form and being the council that's kind of guiding us, and they seem to be even beyond into the next octave and trying to work on what everything is happening on planet Earth in present time, and they're taking that in and, like, learning how to create in the next octave. So they're some form of that guidance and guiding us on this journey. And I thought of, like, Ra being Venus, the first planet, and they did their whole transition, and then now they're in sixth density back into the sun, and I assume that they're kind of working on some unitary level with that sub-logoic consciousness, one step down from the council, and they're helping us learn about our third density, working with the sun, so that when we're harvested, we give some more information back to the sun, and the council is somehow above everything, just like this is how it's all going to go down. So I think that everything's teaching itself somehow, and it's connected on that level of, like, is the council, like, they allowed the Yahweh stuff and the quarantine and all that, like, that's a idea that I've kind of stuck on, is the quarantine and everything here. Like, did the council know that this is the grand master plan of how the creator knowing itself is supposed to go? And there is no mistake in terms of the quarantine and all the suffering and everything we see here? Or is it just, the creator knowing itself on the deepest level? And yes, I can't see there being, some unknowing part in the council's, part of the next octave and us not doing something right. So I don't know if that made any sense.
Yeah.
I have a clarification question that's, might as well ask it now, because what is eighth density? Like, what does it mean to, okay, in this context, like you graduate through seventh, whatever that means. Ra's gonna go through seventh density, and then what? Like, does he merge with the logos? Does he move to the next universe? Like, what does it mean to go through seventh? Like, do you immediately merge back to the creator and then like, oh, now you're infinity? Or like, do you go back to the logos and now you're operating within this level of like, oh, I'm now somewhat merged with the creator, but now I'm viewing it as if I were the galactic consciousness, in which I'm still in this universe, but now I'm just operating at a, what's going on here?
I'm going to respond to that. It seems like that, like, the experience of seventh density, what the kind of quintessential aspect of the experience of seventh density is what becomes the most interesting thing at that point. Like, the lessons are about infinity itself. They're about the creator itself. They're about like being one with the creator itself, which is synonymous with dropping all individualized identity. And it seems like in that condition of seventh density, the primary thing is the merging, is the sort of like collapsing back into the black hole of all of it becoming one once again. But there is still some capacity to participate in the octave. Like, there is still a capacity to look back away from the black hole and look back on the thing you just came from, the creation that's still happening, and participate in that. But it's a minor part of the experience. But we know that one of the things that happens before there's like, while there's still the capacity to look back, seventh density entities crystallize, when we're in seventh density, will crystallize the fullness of everything we have ever experienced or could ever experience, and give it to the higher self, or the sixth density version of ourselves, and create the higher self. So it does seem like there is some possibility to interact with the octave in seventh density, but the overwhelming majority of the experience of seventh density, as I understand it, is not interacting with the density at all. It's like interacting with infinity, interacting with the creator, interacting with like whatever it is that's on the other side of the black hole.
So then what is like the council? The council is related to the octave in some way. I think we somewhat agree on that.
Yep.
Which does that mean they're from the like, what, how does that work? Like, they are they beings that have graduated through seventh density? Like, but then how? I don't know. Maybe I'm asking questions beyond my pay grade.
Well, I want to say something about that. I want to say something in response to that. And, I don't know if it's directly speaking to your question or not, but just like we've been exploring, like, Rod's been talking about that intelligent infinity has kind of two definitions. There's like there's the undifferentiated version of intelligent infinity, and then there's the kinetic version of intelligent infinity. I feel like the octave has a similar thing. It's like a paradox. It's like the octave, there's a way that the octave means, like in one of its aspects, the octave means the completion of the galaxy, the completion of the universe. Like the octave is like the harvest of everything that the logos had conceived of. So it conceived of it, it manifested it, and everything that took place like coalesces back into the octave. Like it coalesces into the graduation, which is like the kind of zero version of the octave. But then the octave also means, like eighth density also means the beginning of the next creation too. So it's like the octave, or I don't know, maybe it's more accurate to say eighth density has kind of two meanings. It has the meaning that is like just like intelligent infinity. It's like it has the meaning of like the graduation of a whole logos's creation, and it also has the meaning of what the next like version of that logos does with that harvest. So like the octave means kind of 0/infinity, but it also means what comes after that in the next creation.
Yeah,
I don't know
like
if
it's a response.
spoke to your question at all. Would you say, BJ?
Like it's a response.
Yeah, it's a learning. It's an evolution. It's how the universe itself evolves, or the logoi themselves evolve, or I don't know, the creator evolves.
So then when you graduate from 7th, do you merge to the logos? Because the logos is part of the creator, right? That seems like a logical, at least to me, like a logical step, either intermediate step to the ultimate creator, infinity. Or does that sound right?
I think so. I mean, I think all identity dissolves at the end of the octave. There is no people, no souls, no mind, body, spirit complexes, no social memory complexes, no angels, no entities. I think remain individuated from this side of the octave to the next octave. I think they all go back into the creator. That's how I think about it.
Yeah, I think so too. I think let's keep reading.
Okay.
Is anybody willing to pick us up at 28:15 and just take us through the end?
I'm happy to read.
Thanks.
Okay. Questioner. Now, as the major galaxy is created, and I'm assuming all of its densities, I'm assuming there are 8 densities created when this major galaxy is created. Is this correct? I'm wrong. This is basically correct. However, it is well to perceive that the 8th density functions also as the beginning density or first density in its later stages of the next octave of densities. Questioner, are you saying then there are an infinite number of octaves of densities 1 through 8? I'm Ra. We wish to establish that we are truly humble messengers of the law of one. We can speak to you of our experiences and our understandings and learn in limited ways. However, we cannot speak in firm knowledge of all the creations. We know only that they are infinite. We assume an infinite number of octaves. However, it has been impressed upon us by our own teachers that there is a mystery-clad unity of creation in which all consciousness periodically coalesces and again begins. Thus, we can only say we assume an infinite progression, though we understand it to be cyclical in nature, and as we have said, clad in mystery. Questioner, thank you. Would you please make the instrument cough again? Cough. Questioner, thank you. When this major galaxy is formed by the logos, polarity then exists in a sense that we have electrical polarity, a gravitational effect that probably isn't polarity. I'll have to ask that question. Do we have electrical polarity existing at that time? We do have electrical polarity existing at that time. Is this correct? I'm Ra. I accept this as correct with the stipulation that what you term electrical be understood not only the one Larson stipulated its meaning, but also in what you would call the metaphysical sense. Questioner, are you saying then that we not only have a polarity of electrical charge, but also a polarity in consciousness at that time? I'm Ra. This is correct. All is potentially available from the beginning of your physical spacetime. It then being the function of consciousness complexes to begin to use the physical materials to gain experience to then polarize in a metaphysical sense. The potentials for this are not created by the experiencer, but by intelligent energy. This will be the last full question of this session due to our desire to foster this instrument as it slowly regains physical complex energy. May we ask if you have 1 or 2 questions we may answer shortly before we close? Questioner, I'm assuming that the process of creation then, after the original creation of the major galaxy, is continued by the further individualization of consciousness of the logos, so that there are many, many portions of individualized consciousness, then creating further items, you may say, for experience all over the galaxy. Is this correct? I'm Ra. This is correct. For within the, shall we say, guidelines or ways of the logos, the sub-logos may find various means of differentiating experiences without removing or adding to these ways. Questioner, thank you. And since we are out of time, I'll just ask if there's anything we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or help the contact. I am Ra. The instrument is well adjusted. You are conscientious. I am Ra. I leave you, my friends, in the love and the light of the one infinite creator. Go forth then, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one infinite creator. Adonai.
Thanks, Sean. Aaron.
Yeah, so I just wanted to, once again, do my best to try to like fold in the primary thing that I appreciate so much about Walter Russell's teaching, which is related to related to this whole section of like gravity specifically. So in 2819, John's question is, are you saying then that we not only have a polarity of electrical charge, but also a polarity in consciousness at that time? And that was after 2818, they were talking about gravity. So what Walter Russell has to say about that is that gravity is a physical force, it's a physical manifestation of a metaphysical impulse. And the creator has 2 primal metaphysical impulses. One is to create its idea. And that's gravity. Gravity is the manifestation, the physical manifestation of the metaphysical impulse to create. And then the creator's other impulse, metaphysical impulse, is to be one, like to be unified, to be itself, to be its true, undifferentiated, undivided self. And that produces the opposite of gravity, which is radiativity, which is what takes things apart. So gravity, is what puts form together. It's what forms suns and planets and people and photons. And radiation is what takes form apart and dissipates it back into the oneness, dissipates it back into the blackness of space. So anyway, I'm just trying to like build a bridge between the 2 systems of telling oneness, and just like kind of just talk about like how it seems like what Ra is saying here supports what Walter Russell talks about, that the polarity of electrical charge is a physical manifestation, but it also has a metaphysical component. That's the key. Like electrical charge, gravitational force is a physical phenomenon, but it's expressing a metaphysical desire of the creator. And it has a correlate. Gravity has a correlate, which is radiation. And radiation is the balancing aspect of the metaphysical desire of the creator to both create and also to, return to oneness.
Yeah.
I always thought gravity was the return to oneness, like the other way around. because gravity sucks everything back
Yeah.
literally to one.
Well, what helps me understand that is like gravity is sucking towards form.
Yeah, exactly.
For use that, it's like, are we going towards like condensing into form, or are we going towards dissipating into space? Like, I think oneness is more kind of the quality of space and uniformity, rather than condensing into the way that we understand density.
Well, I think Shang, the way that I think that when you just said how you see it, that's also correct, because and again, this is kind of drawing from Walter Russell. Centering all bodies, all photons, all suns, all planets, all coherent units of form is a still point. There is a still point that is the spirit complex at the center of all things. And paradoxically, bounding all fields, electromagnetic fields, so, surrounding all suns, surrounding all photons, surrounding all people, surrounding all coherent systems, is a cubic wave field. And at the surface of the wave field is also the spirit complex. Like, there's this like paradoxical nature of the creator is present at the center of gravity, and the creator is also present at the boundary conditions, kind of watching what it has formed through the use of gravity. And it's the same thing. Like, the creator's pure infinite essence is I mean, I don't know. I can't even really say that, because I think the creator's pure infinite essence is present at all points within the field at the center, and within all points in the field, and at the boundary of the field. So it's so difficult to talk about this stuff. But anyway, but there is something about stillness. Basically, like, there's zero charge. At the center of the sun, there's zero charge. And at the boundary condition, at the edge of space that bounds the sun's electromagnetic wave field, is also zero charge. And there's only two places that exist: at the center and at the edge. And in everywhere in between,
this is all Walter
Russell.
Russell.
Yeah. Everywhere in between, there's a charge. Everywhere inside of the created thing, whether it's a sun or a photon or whatever, there's a charge. But the charge is centered by zero, and it's bounded by zero. And the zero is the spirit complex. The zero is the creator in an unmanifest form, either centering or watching its creation. Anyway.
Yeah. Interesting. It kind of sounds like,
in words.
It kind of sounds like the swing of the pendulum or something. The like, and everything, like, once you're on the way, there's movement, but then you hit, okay, now I reached that full expression of gravity, for instance, and then I'll swing back and I reach this full expression of, whatever the opposite is. I don't know. The full expression maybe is what I'm getting of it, of what you're telling, of the zero charge.
Yeah. And that's exactly right. It's a great metaphor, the pendulum. And sometimes Walter Russell will also say the breath or the heartbeat, just the pulse from empty zero at the edge to empty zero at the center, and then through the center back out to the edge. Yeah. The pendulum's a good metaphor.
Well, and I want to say too that the heartbeat aspect from, was it last session or the one before, in reference to like the octave, feels similar to me in the reflection, the mirroring of the human body. In the heartbeat is pumping out red blood cells. The red blood cells go through all the various sizes until it gets to the very last capillary, which is only one red blood cell in width, so that only one gets to go into, let's say, the muscle tissue. It gets to lose its oxygen, and then pressurized goes back into the circulatory system and back around to the heart. So if we are representative of, say, a red blood cell, and we start being oxygenated and through experience refine into a singular dumping of our oxygen, and then head back that very long journey back to the heart before getting pumped out again, to me that feels visually relevant.
Yep.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and then that reminds me of the comment that Ra made earlier in the session of like, this is like fractal at all levels, or something, whatever it was that they said. That was like, the pattern repeats.
Yeah, and even it's a great metaphor, Nia, the red blood cells, because even our blood manifests the kind of duality that is present in all scales of creation in the red and the blue. Like blue is supposed to be again, this is from Walter Russell. Blue is, moving toward, like blue is representative of the, it's towards the stillness of space, and red is towards the incandescence of stars. And that process of our blood cells, our blood being red on its oxygenated half of the journey and being blue on the deoxygenated half of its journey, is once again like manifesting that fractal pattern of the inward and outward breath. The heartbeat of creation is happening in our blood, and then our blood connects to like our literal heart. Our literal breath, the in breath and out breath, is what does the oxygenating. Yeah, it's just, it shows up at all scales of life are wound with these concepts and these movements.
Yeah. Neil, did you want to say something?
I was just gonna say that in the 40th anniversary edition of the raw material, Carla makes a note saying that session 27 through 30 are very hard to understand, and for anyone that's looking for metaphysical and feel good parts of the book, to just kind of wait till after session 30. So this is like really intense, and I think Ra and Dawn probably didn't even understand the fullness of the questions, and they just kind of were like, okay, we'll have to study this later. So
Totally.
Wrap the human mind around.
Yeah, thanks for that comment.
Yeah, thanks for that comment. Totally.
To not pressure ourselves to understand it. And I also think it's meaningful to apply ourselves to it anyway, like to reach into it, I think does a lot for our polarization, to our expand. It's like it's a form of meditation, I think, to open ourselves to something that we don't understand. That's what I experience anyway.
Okay, so I have another question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
You're good at that, Sean. You're like our question engine.
It's 28.6. This whole concept of like first density being timeless. So like I think Ra's talking about like, oh, we're making the solar system, sun bodies have turned their timeless chaos coalescing into what you call planets. These vortices of intelligent energy spinning a large amount of what you would call first density in a timeless state, the space-time realization being one of the learned teachings of this density of beingness. So I'm trying to understand So Ra talks about timelessness in a couple parts in the channelings, and I'm not entirely sure what he means by it. I'm trying to understand it better. So like, at least from our perspective, like the formation of planets happens in space-time as we measure it. Like there's a supernova, or like there's some galactic dust. Anyways, forms a star ignites, there's a bunch of dust around it, give it a billion years, and they coalesce into planets. That's not timeless, because at least by our definition, it happens in time, happens in space, takes a long time, takes a billion years or something, but that's still time. So like when Ross is timeless, is my intuition is like it's referring to something. It's like almost the idea of that solar system even forming before it formed, like before the gas coalesced into like a solar system, there was some thought that happened outside of time space, and because it happened outside of time space, that makes it timeless. Is that
Outside of space-time.
yeah, outside of space-time and
Yep.
time space, right?
I mean, I think it seems like you answered your own question. That's exactly what I was thinking. It's like, I feel like our solar logos conceived of how many planets it was going to create before it created them. That's the timeless state. Like in the solar logos's idea that it was selecting out of the infinite possibilities, it's sort of like, the way I conceive of it is that like the sun decided how many planets it was going to birth before it birthed them. It conceived of that before time existed, before space-time existed. And then space-time begins, and then it starts to unfold in what we call physical reality. Like the sun knew it wanted to have this many number of planets, basically. And it's formed its idea, it completed its idea, and then it made it.
So an intelligent infinity potentiating blueprint. Like the blueprint, the idea of it first is timeless. Then it gets birthed into potentiated, focused outcome, which then puts it in time, space, and space-time. But before that, it was an idea, a blueprint.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And our sun is working within the confines of the metaphysical reality that the galaxy of which it's a part made possible. So the sun is kind of like, it's like selecting from in other words, like our sun probably couldn't sponsor 50 planets. I don't know if this is true or not, but it seems like our sun probably wouldn't be able to support 50 planets. Maybe it could, I don't know. But like the physics of the galaxy dictate the sort of like boundary conditions of what makes a solar system a solar system. And so, you know, like let's say our solar logos could have selected between like 1 planet and 26. I'm making this up. But like our solar logos was like, 9. Let's go with 9, or whatever. And these are rough, strokes here, but like I'm just trying to, I guess what I'm trying to call in though is that, this notion that Ra says that each logos works within the confines that were set by its parent logos. So our solar system is working within the physical, the blueprint, as you said, of its parent. So the galactic logos kind of sets the conditions, and then the solar logos selects within the boundaries of those parameters and chooses what its creation is going to be within that. And then we do the same thing on our scale as mind, body, spirit complexes. We like design our life, our incarnations within the boundaries of what's possible of a human life on Earth. We get to choose within what's possible, and we select something from that.
But would that be considered timeless? Like, what makes it timeless?
I think it would be considered timeless in time space. When we're in the life between lives, we're in the spirit realm. We can stay there for as long as we want. There is no time. There is no limit to how long we can consider our next lifetime.
So then does timeless just mean it happens in time space?
Yeah, basically.
Oh,
Yeah, I think so too.
I see. Okay.
And the other thing I want to say about timelessness is I think time is a measure of what Walter Russell calls duration. And duration is just one beat, one pulse at whatever scale, whether it's a galactic pulse or whether it's a solar pulse or a whatever, a year, a planetary year or whatever, a human lifetime. And like timelessness means there is no heartbeat. There is no, there isn't a duration that happens in space-time, in time space. There isn't really a heartbeat. There's just contemplation. There's no bodies to manifest heartbeats.
I see. Linking timelessness with time space makes things a lot more clear now.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we're at time. Does that feel complete for now?
We're at time.
We're at time. We're at the timeless moment of time.
Thanks for being manifest in time, space, and space-time, y'all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, great discussion. Thanks, BJ, for your facilitation. Very nice. Very nice.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Can we close out with some balloons?
Balloons. Oh, how do we do it again?
V.
Oh, wait. Watch my balloons, everyone. Whee!
There we go. There we go. For some reason, I don't get balloons. Looks like Neil doesn't get balloons either. But Aaron, he gets balloons. Love y'all.
Love y'all.
See you next
Bye.
Send
week.
some hearts.
Or
Send
if
some
not,
hearts. Let me give you
sooner.
some hearts.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Ah.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. See you
Bye
guys.
bye.
Oh, Wednesday. See you maybe Wednesday.